He died at Nasser hospital in Khan Younis 3 months ago. He should have been buried immediately. But only now that the Israel Defense Force has withdrawn can Samaya al-Shorbaji give her husband Osama a proper burial.
We found Osama's body, but we couldn't find the body of Mohammed, his brother. You saw the scene. There are piles of bodies, and some victims can't be found. Had we found Mohammed, we would have buried him next to his brother.
His daughter Hind's memories of her father are still clear. But for how long? He loved me, she says, and used to buy me things. He used to take me out. More than 200 bodies have been dug out from the Nasser hospital complex, where they'd been buried in a shallow mass grave. Some were patients who died of injuries or illness. Others were killed when Israel shelled and then stormed the hospital, saying Hamas fighters were inside. Staff and those sheltering in the hospital grounds for safety were also amongst the dead. And it's not over. Yesterday, at least 22 Palestinians, including 18 children, were killed in Israeli airstrikes on Rafah. Although most Israeli troops have been withdrawn, Israel still carries out airstrikes daily. And Prime Minister Netanyahu says the proposed major ground assault on Rafah will go ahead. For the million or so people camping in Rafah, life is already desperate, with sewage flowing near their tents and an acute shortage of food and medicines. A third of children under 2 are acutely malnourished. More supplies are getting through now, but nowhere near enough. The pace of the war may be slowing, said one aid worker today, but the humanitarian emergency is only accelerating.
And Lindsay is with me now, as there has been a report published into the accusations by Israel that the UN's Palestinian Relief Agency, UNRWA, had been infiltrated by members of terrorist organisations in Gaza. So, Lindsay, what does it say?
Well, you'll remember that Israel said that 12 staff members of UNRWA had participated in the October the 7th attacks, and then various countries withdrew their funding, including the Americans, the EU and Britain. Now, this external report, chaired by Catherine Colonna, former French foreign minister, 3 Nordic organisations doing it, it basically gave UNRWA more or less a clean bill of health. It said that the Israelis had not provided any supportive evidence. It also said that UNRWA did do its best to be neutral. It did a pretty good job. It could have some management improvement. And it also said that UNRWA was absolutely pivotal to providing humanitarian aid and also social services, not just in Gaza, but also in the West Bank for Palestinian refugees in Jordan and in other places as well. So it was a pretty positive report for UNRWA from an outside organisation.
So where does this leave British funding, given it didn't follow the Europeans?
Well, Britain gave $35 million to UNRWA last year, and my understanding from senior sources is that they're now considering refunding. They say that UNRWA has enough money till the end of May, so they're going to take their time over it. I understand that within the Conservative Party there is quite a lot of pressure not to restore funding because Israel wants to basically destroy UNRWA. Israel does not like UNRWA. It sees UNRWA as pro-Palestinian, and it sees UNRWA as the organisation which insists that Palestinians are refugees with rights, and Israel doesn't want that anymore. So there's a lot of pressure on the government both ways, but my understanding is that it won't respond immediately, but it will probably restore funding maybe next month.
Thanks, Lindsay. Well, the Jewish festival of Passover, celebrating the freedom of Hebrew slaves, takes place this week with over 130 hostages taken on October 7th still missing. A bloody war taking more and more Palestinian lives in Gaza, peace talks at stalemate, and Israel's Prime Minister vowing more attacks on Hamas. Today, 2 senior Israeli generals announced their resignations. Our Foreign Affairs correspondent, Secunda Kamani, joins us from Tel Aviv. Secunda.
Well, Krishnan, today Israel's chief of military intelligence said that he was going to be stepping down. He said that under his command, his department had failed to live up to the task they had been entrusted with in failing to prevent the October the 7th attacks, and that he would be stepping down once a successor has been appointed. That will make him the first senior official to resign as a result of what happened on October the 7th. It's expected that there will be others who will do the same once the war has eventually ended. Prime Minister Netanyahu has not indicated that he will do that, to the anger of many Israelis. Also unfolding right now is a growing row between Israeli and American officials over US plans to sanction an ultra-Orthodox unit of the army under laws preventing assistance to security forces accused of serious human rights violations. That in large part stems from an investigation following the death of an elderly Palestinian American man after being detained by the unit in the West Bank 2 years ago. The practical implications of the step may end up being somewhat limited, but symbolically it's very important, and it's a step that Israeli officials are really pushing back on. Tonight, though, as you say, the focus in Israel is on the Jewish festival of Passover. Normally, it's one of the most joyous occasions of the calendar year. Right now, it's a much more somber occasion. It's a time for families to come together. But for Michael and the relatives of other Israeli hostages in Gaza, this Passover is just another reminder of who isn't here.
Honestly, it doesn't feel like a holiday for us, not for me. Everything is kind of the same. We're trying to keep it a holiday because of the girls.
On the morning of October the 7th, Michael's brother Or and wife Inav left their 2-year-old son with relatives, travelling down to the Nova Music Festival. This video shows them hiding with others in a bomb shelter as the attack unfolded. Outside, Hamas fighters approach, hurling grenades inside. Inav is killed or abducted. How to explain that to 2-year-old Almog? Have you told him what's happened?
We told him that his mom won't come back, and that we are trying to bring back his father, with the help of good people.
What does he say?
I just know that he misses them. You can see it. We cannot, you cannot say the words dad or mom next to him without him bursting into tears. So,
do you feel like enough is being done to bring your brother, others back?
The fact that they are not here, that all is not here today celebrating Passover with us, means that none of us is doing enough.
Every Saturday night, there's a rally in Tel Aviv calling for the hostages to be returned. Their abduction remains a national trauma. Most of the affected families are deliberately steering clear of Israel's fractious political divides. But some also attend another weekly demonstration just down the road, calling for Prime Minister Netanyahu to step down over his failure to reach a deal. There's a growing disconnect where many Israelis want to see the government do whatever it takes to bring the hostages home, even if that means ending the war, even if that means allowing Hamas to regroup. But Prime Minister Netanyahu shows no sign of agreeing to that, and everyone knows that for many of the hostages, it's already too late. In a video address yesterday, Netanyahu blamed Hamas for the failure to reach a deal and the breakdown of talks.
Instead of retreating from its extreme positions, Hamas builds on divisions within us. In the coming days, we will increase the military and political pressure on Hamas because this is the only way to free our hostages and achieve our victory.
There have been moments of relief. This was Yarden Roman Gat, reunited with her young daughter. She was one of 81 Israelis released in a prisoner exchange during a ceasefire last November. Yarden's husband, Alon, has been helping her try and readjust. He's still mourning the death of his mother, seen here being led away from her home in Kibbutz Be'eri by militants. Alon's sister Carmel is still hostage in Gaza.
Carmel somehow in this nightmare succeeded to initiate yoga practice and mindfulness with the other hostages. This is her essence, I would say, of Carmel, that she's a caregiver, she's an occupational therapist. This is her life. So over there, in this darkness, she succeeded to be the light for the other hostages.
Hamas seem to be saying, if you want the hostages back, bring an end to the war. Hamas killed your mother, but they still have your sister. Would you be willing to see the war against Hamas ended in order to bring her back and others back?
Of course, because my mother is, unfortunately, she's dead already, and I can't bring her back. I'm focusing on the living, and my sister, she's alive right now. What we need to do is to finish this war, and in general, we need to finish this war. Nobody wants this war to continue. The problem is that we have a terrorist organization that killed 1,200 people in a day in Israel.
Passover is the festival of freedom, as Jews commemorate the liberation of the ancient Israelites from slavery in Egypt. In Tel Aviv's Hostage Square tonight, thoughts and prayers with those held captive in Gaza.